get their message out there, and it especially helped people that maybe have problems with social anxiety and stuff like that to, create an identity in the world. But I think it also disconnects people from a lot of the consequences and effects of what they are doing, and it can lead to some pretty harmful actions taking place because it doesn't feel like you're doing it to another person, So that's something that, well, there's and I don't want to give too much away, but there's a great thing that you do that Emma does when she decides to go transparent. Can I say that? She decides to go transparent. It's a big part of it. And there's a weird, it's like, it's an acting choice that you make, but it's like you become an amplified version of yourself without realizing you're doing it. And yes, it amplifies you, but just like a car that's running on nitro, it's also kind of burning you out a little bit. And so I'm just wondering if there's going to be, if we're going to see an effect, I guess, in society's behavior that we can't see right now because it's just now starting. But in 10 years, are there going to be people that are so burned out by this that there'll be some kind of mass retreat from? It'll be the opposite of Andy Warhol's saying, and in the future, everyone will be allowed to be anonymous for 15 minutes, and then you'll be pushed back out in front of your, If this was 1984, Big Brother.
Or go eat cheese in hotels.
Big Brother would be on the TV for the 2-minute hate, going, "Please stop sending me pictures of your privates. I don't know why we put the cameras in you guys' apartment. You people are nuts." So it is. It's the classic. There's 3 science fiction plots: what if only, and if this goes on. And this is the classic, if only ... But then it goes way too far. But you don't realize it's happening because everyone, especially Eamon, especially May, are so positive and excited and are only seeing the benefits but not the responsibilities. And so that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in real life, I think.
Like the if only of the sort of archetypal, sort of speculative or sci-fi plots. Like, yes. I think what we anticipated in like fiction of the 50s and 60s or like paranoid conspiracy films of the 70s was that the government would steal our information from us, that we should be paranoid of the government, and maybe that's justified. But the irony of modern living is that sort of the panopticon, like the self-regulating society that we have, is one where we've voluntarily ceded our private information for just the ease of a good
Like
app.
if we live in a neighborhood, we saw an unmarked black car with a bunch of radar dishes slowly moving down the street with a radar dish pointing at all our house, we would be outraged and we want to know who's driving that black car. But if it says Google on the side of it, we just say, oh, it's just making a map of a house.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Or if it said Twitter on the side of it, we would be so overjoyed we would tweet out, I feel lucky I live in a Twitter neighborhood now.
People would run outside naked. Hey,
Yeah.
woo!
Do you ever do that just on the off chance that satellites are photographing your house at the time? Just kind of go out and dance around. Did you see the photograph of Earth that the Cassini probe took from inside the rings of Saturn? It was just on it. Literally, it's a probe, and it turned around. It took a picture through the rings of Saturn of this little dot that is the planet Earth. And I wanted to find out exactly when that picture was taken, so I could say, well, here's a picture of me taking a shower before I went to work that day, because that's what I was. That is big data, my friend.
That's big data.
A photograph of the entire Earth. That is some big data.
It's so weird. You're talking about big data. When you watch these paranoid 70s films, Parallax View, All the President's Men, 3 Days of the Condor.
Colossus, the Forbin Project.
The Forbin Project.
Yeah.
Where that's the first movie where someone goes clear.
We are now sitting in the geek section of the.
I'm on this sofa. I was put on this sofa.
There's a wonderful movie called The Matrix, and they go into the computer.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's nuts.
But in those movies, they're digging for one tiny scrap of information. Nowadays, it's the opposite. You're digging through mountains of information to figure out what's pertinent and what isn't. It's not a lack of information. We're being flooded with it and trying to get oxygen in the middle of it to figure out what's real and what isn't. That's the dilemma we're facing now.
But the other hand of that is like, man, you need an answer to a question, of something that is perplexing, and you've got it in a minute and a half, less than a minute and a half, depending on your whether it got 3G or 4G. Yeah, it's an extraordinary gift. At the same time, it can be an extraordinary curse. Big data.
Yeah, I remember a friend of mine was online saying, there's this movie, it's guys in motorcycle helmets with skulls, and then George Sanders is in it, and Psychorama, and like they immediately found, like you could find things now by giving weird general descriptions, and somebody out there will know what you're talking about in the arts or something. Although I don't imagine Woodward and Bernstein going, something with burglars and then plumbers.
But
oh yeah, it's
remember. Okay, there was a movie called All the President's Men. We rag on Emma so much because she's 14 years old, or will be forever because of the choices you've made in your career. Sorry. So there's one scene where Woodward and Bernstein are going through the card catalog in the Library of Congress. It's one of the greatest shots in motion picture history, where the camera just comes up and up and up and up and up, and they're just going through. Well, a Google search now. If Alan Pakula was alive and try to make a dynamic shot of the Google search, Dustin Hoffman would be doing like this in his car.
Yeah.
Oh, Zapruder. He's got, it'd be like that fast. Not exactly the same cinematic possibility.
Well, there's also a scene in that movie, and my dad told me about this when they first saw it in the theater.
Oh, how old are you?
Remember, well, I'm still pretty old.
Okay,
But he saw, they're looking for Kenneth H. Dahlberg.
Yes, yeah.
And they go into a room in the Washington Post where they have every Yellow Pages from the country. That was their Google. But apparently at the time when people saw that scene, my dad remembers people going, whoa, they've got every Yellow Page. This is like a nerve center. And there's people just going through looking for Dahlberg in every single Yellow Page in the country. It was hilarious. Yeah, that was the internet back then.
I mean, but I think of like the end of the conversation, like the last images of Gene Hackman ripping apart the floorboards, trying to search out the truth, and it being sort of unknowable, and him as it's an image of going nuts. I mean, when I read Dave's book and I thought of May, once she goes transparent, becomes a public figure, and then tries to keep up with everyone who wants to comment on everything she's doing, whether she wants to just be connected, everyone be generous, give of herself, be totally connected in a very pseudo-spiritual way.
That part
it's mad.
It's so much
maddening.
watching that. Yeah.
That was something I wanted to speak to as well, which was when you mentioned this kind of like amped up version of herself that May becomes when she takes the decision to become transparent. To be transparent in our movie means that May agrees to be watched all the time throughout her, every single second of her daily life. And I remember James directing me and saying, like more, and playing the version of May that was being watched all the time was exponentially more exhausting than playing the version of May who was just kind of interacting in a way that when she wasn't being watched. And it's interesting because I recently just obviously did this press tour for Beauty and the Beast, and I guess it's kind of like it's on my mind, but I did Jimmy Kimmel, where he makes you read the mean tweets. And it made me realize as I was doing it, I was like, wow, it's being asked of me, and it's being asked of my my friends, everyone around me, to be so much more resilient than I think we've ever had to be, in the sense that usually if someone's saying something unkind about you, they're saying it behind your back, conveniently, quietly in a whisper in another room. But the world that we live in now, with the level of transparency that we're seeing, kids are getting, you get everything, every unkind word, every criticism, every
Jack,
whatever else.
What does it do to you to hear us referencing mean tweets?
You don't right now? But I just realized, like, Annie in our movie, she burns out. I mean, in the most profound
One of the most
way.
realistic things.
She has nothing left. And that's what being like on all the time kind of does for you, and the ability, or not to be able to opt out, not to be able to say, I just need to, like, I don't know, wear sweatpants and like pick my nose and like do all the things that I wouldn't normally do for like a few days. I think it's like that level can just drive you crazy.
Well, I mean, this is sort of a meta question, but I mean, May in the beginning of the story is relatively anonymous, and then midway through she gains some level of celebrity. I mean, I imagine the three of you like have a much thicker skin about such things than say I do. Like, what do you think it would be like for the average person to suddenly just to go out and get a turkey sandwich?
It would be like being on a press junket for Beauty and the Beast for the rest of your life.
But that's what's so crazy is I feel like it's becoming so much more relatable because it's not like fame isn't something that just celebrities are experiencing anymore. To a certain degree, everyone who uses social media or has a social media platform or whatever else is broadcasting themselves, marketing themselves, sharing intimate details of their lives, and you know, they're receiving comment, they're receiving likes, dislikes, like you know, they're experiencing exactly what I'm experiencing, of course to lesser and greater degrees, but like, you know, it's the way that the world is moving. Like my experiences, I don't feel like are unique so much anymore in a really interesting way.
Yeah, fame isn't really being achieved anymore. It's being inflicted on people. I mean, really, there's people that fame is just being inflicted on because of social media.
You can sort of decide to be famous now.